with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Thursday, August 8th, 2024. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Josh Ettingermentum Cohen of the Ettingermentum Newsletter will be with us to talk about Harris selecting Walz. And later in the show, Jesselyn Cook will join us to talk about her book, The Quiet Damage, QAnon, and the Destruction of the American Family. Also on the program today, Harris surges in the polls, gaining in states like Georgia and Wisconsin. And in a Marquette national poll, she now leads Trump by 6 points with likely voters. But there is increasing pressure for Harris to sit for an interview. She has yet to clarify her positions, especially on Gaza. In Michigan yesterday, Uncommitted organizers reportedly got a soft commitment to meet with her, and anti-genocide demonstrators disrupted her speech. Good for them. Republicans have nothing on Walz, so what are they trying out now? Attacking his 24-year military service record. Walz is so squeaky clean, he also reportedly has zero stock or security investments.
Let's go.
After months of delays due to Trump's presidential immunity case before the Supreme Court, the January 6th prosecution is slowly getting back into gear. In Gaza, Israel keeps bombing schools. Yet another school where people were sheltering targeted earlier today. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is looking into Tesla over a mysterious Cybertruck driver death. In the UK, anti-fascist counter-protesters show up to drown out the anti-immigrant thugs taking to the streets. A new study finds water temperatures around the Great Barrier Reef are at their highest in 400 years. But don't worry, guys. U.S. oil production is set to hit a new record this year per August numbers. And lastly, Tropical Storm Debbie makes its second landfall, bringing floods to the southeast and moving north. It's at least partly here because it is pouring today. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am back from my little time back. Yeah, we're doing a little singing here. Welcome back.
It's a little bit before our time. Sam would know, I think.
Welcome back, Cotter. Theme song.
Oh no, but it's
it's another song. Maybe.
It's the chorus in a hip hop song that I'm completely blanking on right now. God damn it. I don't know. Anyway, so welcome to you all. Welcome to an EmMajority Report Thursday. I'm happy to be here. Very happy to be here now that we know that she did not pick Josh Shapiro, Kamala Harris. On Tuesday, she surprised a lot of people and decided not to gratuitously stick a finger in the eye of the left, as I think would have been the case for a lot of past presidents. I mean, Bill Clinton would have picked Josh Shapiro, and then, if they had Twitter back then, tweeted out 2 middle finger emojis to DSA and been like, take this, or suck even on this.
Or the Rahm Emanuel method,
yeah.
Like the strategy of which is what like Jonathan Chait and all those sorts of folks, why they wanted Shapiro is because they're desperate for a Sister Soldier moment. And it's almost like why they get into politics, you seem like
yes.
That's pretty much all Jonathan Chait's articles are basically toward that end. And I mean, as we'll see, they finally got their sort of consolation Sister Soldier.
They got their kind of meek and not so effective Sister Soldier moment by Kamala Harris. We'll get to that in a second. But you mentioned Rahm Emanuel. I mean, Rahm Emanuel did not like Tim Walz because he couldn't self-fund. And the fact that now Tim Walz is the VP selection for the Democratic nominee, it does give you optimism about the direction of the Democratic Party, at least domestically. Like Walz, free school breakfast and lunches, pot legalization, paid sick leave, and state-run paid family and medical leave up to 20 weeks.
And he's not a lawyer?
Not a lawyer. First time in like decades that the Democrats haven't all been lawyers on the presidential ticket. I mean, but this is the Rahm Emanuel, like the end, at least for now. And this is why I'm enthusiastic about this selection by Harris, like the ends of those kinds of politics. I mean, this guy's, he's like a character. He's like a Frank Capra character from It's a Wonderful Life. He, a 24-year military veteran who then became a football coach who, as defensive coordinator, took them to the national championship and then became the advisor for the Gay Straight Alliance as the football coach. Like, I mean, protecting trans care as governor. Won in a rural district in 2006, held on to that seat even when you had the Rahm Emanuels of the world saying we should have just basically rich guys running as Democrats because they can self-fund. He voted against the fast-tracking of the TPP. He got into Congress as an anti-Iraq war veteran.
Yeah, I mean, people and point out, like, you know, even Minnesota's rural areas went more and more red in the precinct, but that's because the National Democratic Party has been very much not Walz.
Exactly, and so that's, if nothing else, this represents a shift in who the Democrats are trying to appeal to that I think benefits the party long term and the agenda of the party long term. And with Harris's 2020, we'll get into a lot of this with Ettingermentum. This is a long lead up into what happened yesterday in Michigan. But with her emphasis on family leave and her close ties with the SEIU, and which is the care workers union, I just think that the ideological fit with Walz is really exciting about what a domestic agenda could look like, especially with his connections to Congress, because he could maybe use those connections to get an agenda through, as opposed to when Biden was Obama's Senate whisperer and all he did was just like, Mitch McConnell, whatever you want, you can have. I don't think Walz is going to be that kind of Senate, or I should say House or congressional conduit for Harris in the same way. I just think the party's in a better position. But with that said, yesterday, protesters interrupted Kamala Harris's speech in Michigan with chants of "We won't vote for genocide." Now, Kamala Harris has, yes, publicly expressed more sympathy for Palestinians than Biden, and privately, reportedly, she was the first administration official to call for a ceasefire. She also apparently was one of the only elected officials to call the guest of Rashida Tlaib to Netanyahu's address, who lost like 150 or more family members in the genocide.
And that was months ago, not like at the address. It was like in February or January or something like that, right?
Yeah, and so these are the kinds of things that give you hope, but the feelings are not policy commitments. And I'm going to be super fair here, right? She probably feels she's hamstrung in how she can respond. Like, she has duties as vice president, and the administration is insisting that the ceasefire is right around the corner and do not do anything to rock the boat. Don't show discord. Don't show that we are ideologically misaligned on this front in any regard. We're trying to tamp down tensions. We don't want war with Iran. This is a very delicate situation. So I'm sympathetic to that. But, like, we need to start seeing a policy platform here because, as I mentioned earlier, she hasn't sat down for an interview in over a month. We don't really know where she stands, and this is why the pressure in the lead up to the convention, where I think she'll roll out more of her policy positions, is key at this point. So this was the rally in Detroit yesterday where she had a very unfortunate reaction to the pro-Palestine demonstrators, and we'll play the first disruption and then when she had her pretty poor attempt at the girl boss moment.
And please do check out Project 2025, because I'm telling you, it is a plan. It is a plan to weaken America's middle class. Project 2025, if he is elected. It's all good. It's all good. I'm here because we believe in democracy. Everyone's voice matters, but I am speaking now. I am speaking now.
So this would have been okay if she left it there. Everyone's voice should be heard.
So
all right.
Project 2025. Look, if he is elected, Donald Trump intends to give tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations. He intends to cut Social Security and Medicare. He intends to surrender our fight against the climate crisis, and he intends to end the Affordable Care Act. You know what? If you want Donald Trump to win, then say that, otherwise I'm speaking.
So then we had an extended stare down, and she used the line that she used against Mike Pence in 2020 against anti-genocide demonstrators in Michigan. So there's a good portion of the Democratic electorate and the electorate at large that's going to like this. But the reality is that half of Biden voters feel that Israel is committing genocide. So she has to be responsive to this. She has to be. There's just no path forward and without doing so. And Walz, as a pick in and of itself, indicates to me that she feels she does have to be responsive to the left in some capacity. So she's attempting to go through this process with scant policy specifics on Gaza. But that's not going to fly because of the nature of the horror and because of these brave activists who people online were like, what do they want? Like, what do they want? She's better than Biden. She's shown sympathy. She's in favor of a two-state solution. Whoop-de-doo. Every Democrat's in favor of that. Bernie won't even say genocide. The permission structure is incredibly narrow on this front. So we have to glean a lot of things. But what we have so far is intentionally vague, and they're attempting to get her to take positions that will systemically change things, like an arms embargo.
This is a delicate part of a lot of people's political educations. I remember listening to this show as a listener before I was a producer on it when Sam was saying, actually, let's not freak out that Black Lives Matter is directing their protest at Bernie Sanders' campaign, because part of it is he's speaking to the real thing. It's resonant there because he's real about it. So people saying like you should go protest Republicans, well, it's like, yeah, nobody knows. That's meaningless. Like that's not a real thing. We know why. It's because you have Rashid Tlaib, you have other people who've called for ceasefires. There's actual purchase here. Yes,
and to your point, this is Elise Joshi. She's the executive director of Gen Z for Change, and she speaks to this exact efficacy here. She said, when I tearfully interrupted the White House for bold climate action, I was told I'd get a meeting, and it happened 6 months later, only after a coincidental interaction at the conference. All of us need to amplify this encounter and push for this meeting to happen. She's referring to this statement here, if we could pull this up. The Uncommitted movement, as I mentioned earlier, did reportedly get FaceTime with her before the rally and before that happened. And people are saying, well, they met with her. Why did they disrupt her speech? Okay. The idea that these are the same demonstrators, I just think is extremely far-fetched. And also, they still should be doing that for the reasons Matt just described.
You have to draw attention to this. I mean, look, again, like Frederick Douglass, 1857, power concedes nothing without a demand. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are men who want crops without plowing the ground. They want rain without thunder. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and never will. This is the time to be doing it. And all the people who think like, actually, look, she might need to be moderate for the election. Well, she has a perfect opportunity as long as she doesn't break with Biden on Gaza, because these disruptions are not going away. Because guess what? What's happening in Israel is worsening to like apocalyptic levels, and to level and something that we need to frankly spend more time on once we've gotten caught up with what's been going on in politics. And so and also we have the history of this where pro-gay marriage protesters disrupting Obama, pro-DACA folks, like these protests actually do get results. This is just like basic history.
Yeah, and to the point, to that point as well, I think that this meeting, to what that executive director said, the fact that the protests happened after she said that she was open to this meeting where an arms embargo would be discussed. It's vague based on the New York Times reporting if she said she was open to the arms embargo or if she was open to the meeting. In the end, I think as more details have come out, it seems like it's more that she's open to the meeting regardless. But scroll to the end of their statement here, if you don't mind, just this bottom paragraph I wanted to read. Okay. Yeah. Both Ella Elabed and Al-Wahi thanked the vice president for her openness to engaging with the demands of uncommitted voters. Ella Elabed, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing these names, also thanked Governor Walz for recognizing and supporting uncommitted Democratic primary voters. So that is some more positive, I think, signals from Uncommitted. They're essentially saying, come to us, let's have a meeting, let's have a conversation. And the increased focus on this after those protests happened, I think makes that meeting more likely.
It's urgent.
Now, this also makes this meeting more likely. This is Abraham Ayash, the Michigan State House Majority Floor Leader, an elected Democrat in Michigan, saying that a ceasefire is not enough. She said, or he says here, so there's no confusion. Calling for a ceasefire when you have the power to, I don't know, actively thwart the killing of innocent men, women, and children by not supplying bombs and weapons to Israel's Netanyahu is not enough. 40,000 people have been massacred. By the way, there are letters being written by doctors in Gaza who put the number at over 90K American doctors. Millions have been displaced, are under rubble, or are starving to death. So if Americans are demanding their leaders stop funding a genocide, maybe we should direct the outrage at said genocide. What do I know, though? I'm just from Michigan. So this is an elected Democrat in Michigan using leverage against Kamala Harris. This is exactly the time to be doing so, specifically before the convention where the platform is going to be unveiled.
And I'm sorry, like, you are undercutting your critique of Project 2025 fascism when you are silent about this. The support for what Israel's doing right now is one of the big bad things that hypothetically we would want to avoid a Republican administration for.
Exactly.
We have the benefit of having it under a Zionist Democrat, so we can see how urgent this is to actually demand real change. So that meeting needs to happen, and Kamala needs to signal that she is more open than Biden, because that's the only way we can really pressure Biden. More
signaling than she's been doing now, which is just like, here, let's read between the lines. Let's signal this for people who are like the most savvy readers of media. And like, that's not going to translate. I'm just sorry. It's not going to.
These protesters are too savvy for that.
And she may not need like these voters in Michigan. That's the reality of where this campaign is going. It's quite popular at this point. But with her selection of Walz, I have hope that she has ideological commitments and beliefs and actually does want to make a change. And with some of those things we've heard behind the scenes about Palestinians and how she's expressed more sympathy, and some have heard from her. At the very least, she sees it as a political liability. I think that's clear. And because there's that tension, this is the exact right time to exploit it. And so thank God for all those protesters and the Uncommitted movement and everybody that's keeping up the fight. Because without them, the Democrats would love to not talk about Gaza or Israel for the entirety of the rest of this election.
They've tried to do this before. I mean, Hubert H. Humphrey, 1968, tried to go the entire way without breaking with LBJ on Vietnam. And he should have done it earlier because he waited till late September and it wasn't soon enough. And the people who actually got popular attention there, RFK and Eugene McCarthy, like anti-war, like this sort of part. Fine, if you can win without this, then one thing you're going to have to accept is them harshing the vibes and drawing your attention to what's going on in Palestine right now. Because guess what? Like, they are right. They are absolutely righteous about that. And trying to duck it, like, it might work for an electorate.
And half of Biden voters think it's a genocide.
Exactly.
Right? So, like, there is... She can do this. You can. Right?
Yep.
And let's attempt to continue to solidify this goodwill and move this country and this party forward in ways that I'm optimistic about based on the Walz pick and some of the other parts of her campaign. But this is the other part. It's also about American empire. It's not just about childcare in this country. What we do to Palestinians is reflective of our inhumanity here at home as well. With that said, here's a word from our sponsors. Folks, with a changing menu of 50 recipes to choose from each week, HelloFresh makes it easy to always find something that the whole family will love. We want to thank HelloFresh for supporting the Majority Report. HelloFresh's new Build-A-Plate meals are designed to let every member of your household create the perfect plate. There's no more making multiple dinners to satisfy everyone, just one meal for so many ways to enjoy. For a limited time, kids eat free. Go to HelloFresh.com/MajorityKids, one word, to unlock this exclusive offer. One free kids meal per box for 2 months while subscription is active. HelloFresh is phenomenal if you don't want to waste ingredients, if you want to personalize things for kids that may be picky eaters, like with this these new kids meals and personalization with Build-A-Plate. But even before that, HelloFresh was like saved me in a pinch too, especially when I was a little bit hesitant about going to grocery stores in COVID and like I was making dinners alone in my apartment. HelloFresh is pretty good for that very purpose. From the planning, shopping, and prepping to actually getting everyone to enjoy what you made, family dinners can be stressful, but HelloFresh gets it. They make it easy by delivering fresh ingredients and picky eater-approved recipes right to your door each week. HelloFresh meals can easily be customized to fit your family's taste. With protein and veggie swap options, you and the kids can choose just the right combos for each week's deliveries. Back to school season means shopping, after school activities, and a lot less free time. Skip the meal planning and grocery store runs with nutritious and delicious meals from HelloFresh. They handle most of the prep too, making getting dinner on the table easier and faster than ever. Ready to solve the family dinner dilemma? HelloFresh's line of kid-friendly family options means that even the pickiest of eaters will be part of the Clean Plate Club this back-to-school season. HelloFresh's easy-to-follow recipes include pre-portioned ingredients delivered fresh, so no last-minute grocery store run required. Just choose your delivery day, open your box, and get cooking. And HelloFresh's new 6-portion plans are perfect for feeding the whole family or to have leftovers for effortless lunches the next day. For a limited time, kids eat free. Go to HelloFresh.com/MajorityKids to unlock this exclusive offer. One free kids meal per box for 2 months while subscription is active. That's free kids meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/MajorityKids. And lastly, Henson Shaving. You know those cheap razors? They give you nicks, they give you razor burn, irritation, cuts. You have got to meet Henson Shaving. Henson Shaving is a family-owned aerospace parts manufacturer that has made parts for the ISS, the International Space Station, the Mars rover, and they are bringing precision engineering to your shaving experience. Razor blades are like diving boards. The longer the board, the more wobble, the more nicks, cuts, and scrapes. A bad shave is not a blade problem, it's an extension problem. By using aerospace-grade computer numerical control machines, Henson makes metal razors that extend just 0.0013 inches, less than the thickness of a human hair. That means it's a secure and stable blade with a vibration-free shave, and it gets better. The razor has built-in channels to evacuate hair and cream. It makes clogging virtually impossible. Seriously, Henson Shaving wants the best razor, not the best razor business. That means no plastic, no subscriptions, no proprietary blades, and no planned obsolescence. Like, I actually think this company is almost too good to be true. You basically buy the razor, and the blades are so cheap on their own. They're not jacked up by these companies that are massive conglomerates and have deals with local pharmacies and grocery stores and places like that. Like, they just want the best razor to provide for people. The Henson razor works with a standard dual-edge blade to give you that old-school shave with the benefits of new-school tech. Once you own a Henson razor, it's only about $3 to $5 per year to replace the blades. I just want to repeat that because I messed it up. $3 to $5 per year to replace the blades. Like, my fiance uses it. It's just incredible. We've saved so much money on this razor, and just not having to go and...
Because the old model is basically robbery.
Exactly. Like, if word gets out about Henson, like, I don't want to, people need to figure
Protect Henson.
Protect Henson. It's time to say no to subscriptions and yes to a razor that will last you a lifetime. Visit hensonshaving.com/majority to pick up the razor for you and use code majority, and you'll get 2 years worth of blades free with your razor. Just make sure to add them to your cart. That's 100 free blades when you head to hensonshaving.com/majority and use code majority. HENSON shaving.com/majority. Use code majority at checkout. We'll put a link to all of this in the description wherever you're listening to or watching this. Okay, quick break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Ettingermentum. We are back, and we are joined by Josh Cohen, aka Ettingermentum of the Ettingermentum Newsletter on Substack. I'm a subscriber. You all should be too. Welcome back, Josh. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hello. I think I was on like about a month ago. Stuff has changed a little bit since then.
Yeah. Well, what were we talking about or, weeping about a month ago? Just the fact that Biden was slow walking us into a second Trump term, the fact that he was running on a strategy of NATO mumblings and somber patriotism.
You can't forget about AUKUS. He brought Japan and Korea together. You cannot forget about that. That was such a good anecdote when he flipped out at that one member of Congress from Colorado and yelled at him that his son got the same decoration he did, so he can't say anything to him. That was awesome. I need a movie about this so badly.
Are you seeing these quotes by Nancy Pelosi?
Yeah, I have. I got her book. I'm gonna learn everything now.
Oh my gosh, good.
Yeah.
This is the true, the art of the deal. I mean, this is, or it's really true. The Sun Tzu's The Art of War. Not really, actually, but
The Art of Power. That's the name of her book.
Is that the name of the book?
Yeah, I'll show it.
Wait, you have it?
Yes. I'm about to learn everything.
Okay, show it on camera. Put it in the middle there. Wow.
Yeah, that's real.
Do I unironically love her now? I mean,
no, she's cool. She opposed the Iraq War.
Yes, so same with Tim Walz.
Yeah, Tim Walz he opposed TARP, he opposed NAFTA, he opposed CAFTA. He's the Bush era leftists have won. The Netroots have won.
Netroots Nation has won.
The Bernie Sanders of Congress, I think they're calling it.
Many people are saying this was
not
the
even
Pelosi...
a joke about the Netroots thing. He was one of those veterans who ran in 2006, and they all lost. He was one of like two who won. It was him and like, I guess like Jim Webb.
In a red rural district. I mean, I guess Tammy Duckworth was also kind of a part of those.
Yeah, she lost that year, actually.
Oh, she did? And then won later.
Yeah, she won later on.
Gotcha. So these were anti-Iraq war veterans. But this was the quote from Nancy Pelosi. I mean, this is not how I anticipated starting our conversation, but I just think we're having fun right now. So in the New Yorker today, Pelosi said about Biden, "I've never been that impressed with his political operation," she admitted. "They won the White House, bravo. But my concern was, this ain't happening, and we have to make a decision for this to happen. The president has to make a decision for that to happen." So, like, that's amazing to see because you, Josh, have long been critical of Biden as a politician. His political acumen has been overstated in your estimation. Can you give a sense of why you feel that way and why someone like Pelosi may feel that way?
Yeah. There's my dog went into the background. You can say hi to her, everybody. Yeah. I don't know why she went exactly in the camera, but hello. We see you.
She's so sweet.
Yeah, she's the best. But yeah, that was very vindicating to read because like I had, and like this was kind of like the through line that I followed for basically a year. I had always been kind of agnostic towards like the Biden administration, like following politics, like with the 2022 midterms, and after that, I didn't think they were like particularly like great master politicians, but I didn't like see them as particularly inept either. Like I was willing to sort of believe that their low approval ratings were just because of inflation that was out of their control. I didn't really like how they handled Congress, but they passed those bills. This was before October 7th, so like their foreign policy record was Ukraine, which was like give or take, like I guess that was an accomplishment. But then I got this book around the middle of 2023 called The Last Politician by Franklin Foer, and it was a very like kind of like positive book towards him. It was one of these Biden biographies that they published like around 2023 that like they actually like sold very poorly, which is why we haven't seen Biden biographies lately, but like which is a little disappointing. I'd like one over like the past couple of weeks, but hopefully that'll come eventually. Pelosi actually did say she would write a book about the past month or so, which I'm really looking forward to. I hope she stays around for that.
Me too.
But yeah, but this book basically was supposed to be, the thesis of it was that we live in this era of gridlock where the politicians are kind of just showmen and like just fodder for the parties, and people just went off of polarization and everybody just wants to become celebrities. But Biden is, as in the words of the title, the last politician, and he has this ancient like lost art of politics skill set that he uses to get things done that people considered impossible. And I just kind of skimmed through it, and I went to the part about the 2022 midterms, which is where the race like sort of ends. And I was curious as to like kind of how he said they thought about it. And what I read was really alarming, because what like they said wasn't like, oh, this was about abortion, this was about Republicans being too extreme. They saw the 2022 midterm results as a vindication of them, like literally their administration. They thought people were voting for Democrats in like Michigan and Pennsylvania that year, not because they were running against insane abortion fanatics or people who want like people to have to get children after being raped. They thought it was because like people appreciated them being more moderate on abortion. Like you may remember that Elizabeth Warren pushed for like using federal land to set up abortion clinics. They explicitly rejected that, and they thought that the reason they won was because they rejected that. They took personal credit for these like victories that other Democrats did that happened in spite of them.
But
like
his
that
approval
was their
rating was super low, and everyone, and this is why people need to subscribe to your newsletter. Like my predictions about this election would not have been as good if I hadn't been reading your work. Like truly, you do the work on this. Like Biden's approval rating was low at this point.
Yeah, it was.
It didn't recover after the Afghanistan withdrawal. I mean, who knows if that's causal? I don't think it is. I think it was just more like, the COVID benefits and like the child tax credit began to expire, and there were no more stimulus checks and things like that. And people's purchasing power was affected. Like rent has never been higher in this country. So I think a lot, and his inability to like lead, and then eventually, of course, the support for the genocide. But
yeah,
how did those numbers not translate when we're seeing like generic Democrat polling much better than Biden, specifically his approval rating being low, and yet his team was somehow convinced that it was his politics and policies driving the success for Democrats?
Yeah, it got to really absurd extents. Like they took credit after Andy Bashir won. like in 2023, like Andy Bashir won his race after he led in polling the entire time and was expected to win. They said, "Oh, you guys like you never expected Democrats could do well, and we just won more elections." Like they held the state legislator in Virginia, and they won the Kentucky's governor's race. The Kentucky's governor's race was because Kentucky had like a bunch of tornadoes and a cave-in, and Bashir was there, and people thought that he was like a strong leader for natural disasters. It had nothing to do with Biden at all, but they were taking credit for these things, and it was just setting up this kind of like storybook narrative about how like this kind of superstition about how they were always underestimated, how they always came back, that wasn't based on any like empirical data at all. It was just this kind of shoddily crafted, disingenuous sort of thing. And it was really concerning to me because I thought they were just like trying to just cover for like something that was really concerning there or something that wasn't convincing. But from what we've seen since he dropped out, they may have like sincerely just not have believed in polling. Like supposedly they hadn't conducted internal polls for months. When they got the polling data showing how badly they were running in all of these states that like everybody else was seeing for weeks at that point, it was news to them. Like according to like what the reporting is on this, like this, they weren't aware that they were like on track to actually lose. They told themselves after the 2022 midterms that polling was wrong, which it wasn't. Polling that year was correct. The punditry was wrong. Like the polling actually did show Democrats winning in all the states that they won and having a close race for the House. It never showed that. It never showed a red wave. That was just pundits overthinking it and over kind of assuming stuff about the election. But like the Biden people created this narrative that was part of this larger kind of narcissistic narrative around Biden's larger life story about how he's always been counted out and how he always comes back. And it just like created this kind of like castle of superstition and just like disingenuity that they lived in. And it like eventually you saw it like it was not, I mean, it probably could have been sustainable, which is the scary part. It took the earliest debate in history for it to really like kind of like for push to come to shove, but it did. So thank God for that.
So can you reconcile the fact that Kamala Harris is running like very successfully right now, in part though I think just due to the fact that she is the generic Democrat that we've been hoping for.
Something
right?
closer to that. I don't think she's exactly that. I do think like right now, like I still have my doubts about Kamala. I don't like think she was the ideal candidate. I had my list that I made of all the prospective candidates, and she was closer to the bottom because she's never been particularly popular. She's not electorally proven in the way that pretty much every other Democrat was. It was interesting following the Veep stakes because you had like all like these contenders for like the number 2 position, and across the board, they all had far more successful records for president and for running a presidential campaign than Kamala herself did. Like you had Shapiro, who won by 17, 15 points in Pennsylvania. You had Kelly, who won back-to-back victories in Arizona. Walz won in a red district for 10 years, and he won 2 elections like in a purplish state. Like Bashir won in Kentucky. Like all of these contenders had like more solid, proven records at the ballot box than Kamala does. And I think there is still something of a gap between how she's polling and how someone like Bob Casey or Tammy Baldwin or Ruben Gallego is polling. But like that gap has narrowed because the difference between like her and one of those more generic Democrats is a lot less, like it's not as wide of a difference as it was between with Biden between them. Because with Biden, there was a very, very strong question of competence that he just could not get over. You had 85% of the public thinking he was too old to do the job. I do think that, like, going back to what the cause of his disapproval was, I personally do see the Afghanistan collapse as a turning point because his reputation that he kind of traded off of in 2020 was that he was this elder statesman, like very experienced figure who could like get things working again, and that did not like. That was what that was what people were hopeful about. And then you have this like foreign policy debacle happen under him. And that really takes the sheen off and it paints everything else in a very poor light. So like this old person with a record of failure, people don't think can run, like is going to be stuck. And his numbers were very, very stagnant against Trump, which was the scary part. For like about a year after October 7th, his numbers were consistently behind Trump's. With Kamala, there's like more kind of, people are I don't think they're necessarily settled on her, but there's the perceptions of her are not nearly as baked in as something as solid as like this person is too old and they're not getting any younger. People have concerns about Kamala not having accomplishments. They have concerns about her not being experienced or maybe being too liberal, and like, which probably is just derived more from like her persona and her background than it is her actual policy statements. But like that is, that's more malleable, and that people can like kind of brush those concerns aside a lot more easily than they could have with age. So we're kind of like the better version of somebody running with the Biden record. It's not exactly the ideal you would see for a Democrat totally disconnected from that record, which I personally always saw as the ideal. But like, you're getting rid of a lot of difficulties that were impossible to get rid of with Biden, and it's just that might be enough. It looks like that could be enough. It looks like that will be enough.
Right. And to your point, you know, if it was someone completely disconnected from the unpopularity of the Biden administration, we'd have a very different race as it relates to Israel and Palestine and what she's dealing with right now, even though in the end, I think it's difficult for us to understand how little I think a lot of voters like have that affect them. But I am curious though, like, you know, you talk about how the Biden campaign didn't believe in polling. Harris inherited that entire campaign infrastructure, and Jen O'Malley Dillon stayed on as one of the top people on that campaign. Can you just define the difference between Biden's like extremely old and associated with the family inner circle versus the campaign infrastructure, and why Harris has been able to use that same campaign infrastructure to have much more success?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's necessarily because of her campaign infrastructure. I wrote about this in an article I published earlier this week, kind of laying out how she could win. And it's just, for as successful as her rollout has been, I think that's more of just a fact of the circumstances than a fact of her accomplishments or the accomplishments of her campaign. She is getting a positive reception right now, partially because she has delivered good speeches and like press the case in a way that's compelling to people and gets attention. But it's fundamentally, she is giving people what they want. What people have always wanted this year was a younger, new figure to bring the country past the Biden-Trump years of really old people who they regard as failures on either side. This wasn't necessarily related to ideology. They would be happy with a younger liberal. They would have been happy with a younger conservative. You had Shapiro leading Trump by 10 points in Pennsylvania. You had a Haley leading Biden by 20 points nationally, I think, in one poll. People just fundamentally wanted like just a new figure. And she's not the perfect example of that because she's the sitting vice president, but she is that to a far greater degree than Biden was. So it's people kind of, I think her success has been people kind of reading in what they want to believe about her, because people are so desperate for like a sense of hope. They're willing to give her like a benefit of the doubt. Moderates will look at her and kind of see, oh, this is like kind of like a moderate liberal figure, like that I can get behind. Left-wing people will look at her and like see her as somebody who may be more sympathetic to their concerns than Biden was, and has a more kind of like a better background than him, like as like this 50-year corporate senator. It'll be tricky for her to kind of, I don't know, like, I mean, I don't know if it'll necessarily be impossible to thread that needle or for it to even really be hard. People just kind of want her to be what they want her to be so badly now that I think she'll get a lot of leeway. But we haven't really seen the rubber hit the road in terms of like her having to make like big campaign decisions. And I can't say I'm too enthusiastic with how she's kept that team together. There's some really crazy anecdotes that I read that showed that pretty much anything could be an improvement just to return to a basic campaign organization. I think there was a story that Mike Donilon, one of Biden's like many senior advisors, was essentially the entire ad team himself. They wrote that like he would come up with ideas for ads on his own. He would pitch it to some guy, and then they would use like this $300 million campaign. They would just make the ads based off of what this one guy thought of.
They'd also spent like no money on ads in the lead up to, I mean, they were trailing. Sorry. They did in all the swing states, but it was, I think, digital that they weren't. And that makes sense.
Yeah,
this old guy.
Nothing on Facebook. That was like a big difference.
The determinations. But in terms of, let me just ask you about what you think about her selecting Tim Walz then, because that seems to be a much more left-friendly pick than I've seen in my lifetime for vice president. And like I said this earlier, if Clinton were running for president right now, honestly, either Hillary or Bill, they would have picked Josh Shapiro and then tweeted 100%. Out like a mocking. They would have mocked the left and made a thing out of it, and then gone to a corporate fundraiser and use that to get some checks. So this is I think a good sign. What's your assessment of it? And if you could talk about Walz a little bit.
Yeah, Walz kind of did I have an interesting history with him because I was a big Whitmer pusher very early on just to kind of prove a point to people. She was always my kind of platonic ideal of a generic Democrat. So when she was passing all those laws in 2023, I would always be like, this is what we could have if not for Biden insisting on staying in the race. Because I was really big on Biden dropping out. I think as early as April 2023, I was making arguments about that. I was in this for the long haul. And Whitmer was my big kind of example I used for how you could be more successful. But Walz at the same time also had his majority. And I have a lot of followers, a lot of readers from Minnesota, an alarming amount of readers from Minnesota. They would always go up to me in my replies and just always point out no, Walz is better. Walz did this. Walz did that. You're sleeping on Walz. You need to get Walz pilled. I'm and I just got kind of annoyed and contrarian about it. I was shut up. I don't care about him. He looks like he's 80 years old. I would made some tweet making fun of them saying they were NPCs. But so that kind of left me sort of polarized against him. So when I made my list, he was kind of an afterthought for me. I put him in C tier, I didn't really see what kind of the idea was. I had him ahead of Pete. I
love that you have the same fixation on rankings that I do.
I do.
Categorize our minds. Okay, go on.
Yeah, but so I really, he was just kind of an example of me, oh, this guy's, I guess he's qualified, but he doesn't come from a swing state, and I guess there wouldn't be anything wrong with him. But I thought that it wouldn't really add anything to the campaign that someone like Beshear or Cooper or Whitmer could, or Shapiro initially I was kind of intrigued by before all the scandals came out, and I was okay, we're done with this. And Callie also having his terrible record. But then Whitmer says she's not running. Cooper bows out of the race. Beshear kind of flops on TV, and Walz is sort of does his very successful push. And he sort of takes that slot as the non-centrist, electable sort of middle of the road Democrat that I feel Cooper or Beshear or Whitmer could have if they either wanted to try in the case of Cooper or Whitmer, or they were actually good at television in the case of Beshear. So he kind of takes that spot that I always saw as the ideal pick for her by default, while Shapiro and Callie are kind of running to as far to the right as possible. There's all this stuff going on out about there. Not really that Shapiro, but I mean he refuses to apologize for that terrible racist essay he wrote when he was 20 years old. And so I kind of really warm up to him as kind of the pick that makes the most sense. And so I write this article about him. I try to kind of temper expectations. He does have that history of success in rural areas, so his persona does bring results to a certain degree, people expect. But since he's gone statewide and run for governor, that appeal is diminished. Part of that's due to polarization, and he couldn't really do much about it. But it does show that there is kind of a waning effect here. He's not the same politician he was when he was winning his district by 30 points in 2008. But
it also made him more left and more liberal and governing in that particular way. What do you think this says about the incentive structure for Kamala Harris and who she should be appealing to? I also like the fact that he's a congressional veteran that has some ties to Congress, and even our new friend Nancy Pelosi was pushing for him, in part because I think she actually wants to get a domestic agenda through Congress, and he's by far the most beneficial person based on anyone from AOC to Joe Manchin is saying they like this dude. I mean, this is, if she wants an agenda passed, he could actually help.
Yeah, just through that experience. But it also shows, I think, and this is the most encouraging part of the pick for me, beyond the fact that I think he's good electorally and is a good speaker. It's ironic because I think he was kind of picked to a certain degree, that, so he wouldn't outshine her. But I think just watching the speech they gave yesterday and in Philadelphia, I think he's a better public speaker than she is. He's I think he already kind of outshines her, even though he's not trying to. I think he would obviously be a better person at the top of the ticket, just like for a fresh start in that respect. But like, there's nothing. She's really kind of unaccomplished electorally, so anybody I think would have kind of upstaged her in that respect. But the thing that was the most encouraging to me is that, according, I think, to the New York Times, a thing that attracted her to Walz was that he does have that record of passing a lot of progressive legislation that she supposedly wanted to be her own legacy and her priorities in Congress.
Yep.
And the big thing with Walz and Whitmer, at least for me, like back in 2023, where there was a lot of kind of discussion and despair over like the rotating villain theory, or like how committed are liberals even to like these boilerplate parts of their agenda, Walz does show that they were at least willing to walk on that and like really like do a lot of work with a very small majority, like political. He said that his philosophy is to burn political capital instead of hoarding it, which is the opposite of the Rahm Emanuel sort of view of politics in a way that I think is really encouraging. But the fact that Kamala sees his kind of politics as a model of the politics of actually passing things and leaving a legacy, compared to the Shapiro or Kelly kind of politics of just playing to the middle as much as you can and trying to just win elections without doing much with it, I think that like reflects kind of positively towards her mindset. And I think that like that is a good choice if she does intend on actually getting those policies passed.
I totally agree with you. I think it's a party-wide shift, too, because Sam often describes Biden as a cipher for the Democratic Party. I think she's more of a cipher. And I think
they both are.
But he has, like, obsessive Zionism, like, as an ideology. He's the credit card senator.
He's also not there.
Mentally. I mean, that's part of the issue. Like, she's more of a cipher in the way that I think is more positive, to be honest with you. But we're running a short on time, so I just had to get your thoughts on Shapiro and that implosion. Like, the spin that he took himself out of the race is hilarious to me.
It's
hilarious. It's like I didn't break up. You didn't break up with me. I broke up with you. I mean, and all these pro-Obama pundits, he's clearly associated with like that consulting class of folks, coming out and essentially saying, they just didn't see eye to eye on the role, as opposed to, and he maybe wanted to continue his term in Pennsylvania. Like, what were his upsides? He didn't. His candidacy was sunk by a series of scandals that included anti-Palestinian racism, a buried
sexual
murder
harassment
case.
Scandal in his office also. Sexual that was the thing that really made me like, okay, this is it.
Or was it anti-Semitism, Josh?
No, it was it was sexual. Oh yeah. But yeah, that was all unexplained. It is kind of funny because you see all these right-wing pundits are like visibly kind of pissed off that she didn't go with him, like trying to see like, oh, like how are they not choosing this good pick who would have won them the election, when it's clear, like it's really obvious they just wanted to talk about that murder case from now until November.
Yeah.
So I think she dodged a bullet in that respect. I don't want to like deny Shapiro's political talents. I know he's an Obama impersonator, but like not everybody could win by 15 points in Pennsylvania. There is something there, but I don't like agree with him on policy. I think Walz, like you could make the electoral argument for him. He's certainly like somebody who I'd vastly prefer to be a president one day compared to Shapiro, even though Walz says he is not interested in that. I mean, I guess we'll see. There's also a story that said he was preparing for this opportunity for 13 months. Which is something kind of curious to do if you're that unambitious. So I don't know about Walz 2032, but I'd prefer that over Shapiro 2032, definitely.
Definitely, and he would still be younger than Trump, I think, in he's got
2016.
20,
yeah, but Walz is like 60.
Yeah. Walz is 60, he just looks older, right? And he has a funny anecdote about, how you lose all your hair when you're a public school teacher. But yeah, exactly, right? We're in a much better position. Absolutely. He'd be 68 in 2032. It's
not the worst thing in the world.
No, not the worst thing in the world. Shapiro, it's just like the other lie that was pissing me off was that his Israel policy is no different than that of the other candidates. I heard that over and over. Anytime the criticism would come up on cable news, the anchor would say it, specifically on CNN. That's a lie. That's just a lie. It's a complete lie. Shapiro volunteered in the IDF, wrote an anti-Palestinian racist article back when he was in college.
Proposed to his wife in Jerusalem.
Was coming out against Ben and Jerry's, refusing to
he enforced BDS law, anti-BDS laws. Most liberal Zionists won't even go up to bat for anti-BDS laws.
Yes.
It's Like he had like tweets talking about how like Netanyahu was like this great leader, and that was in 2011. Netanyahu was going against Obama administration policy there. That was, if you're like a good Democrat who supports your president, then you do not back like a foreign leader who's going against your own country's policy. The only other person who did that at the time was Joe Biden, and I guess that's why he liked him so much. So yeah, that would have been really unfortunate because he definitely would have run for president eventually. And so I feel like we dodged because these VP picks do matter. At this point, we're on Obama's VP's VP, and it's like there's like a real chance we could be on Obama's VP's VP, like in 2028 or 2032. Well, definitely 2032, 2028 is not going to be competitive if Kamala wins. But like these things do matter. Like it's kind of scary how consequential it could have been. And I think we definitely landed on one of the better outcomes. I still, like I'm sad, it wasn't Whitmer, though. I think that would have worked. But
I know,
whatever.
well, I know, but that's too much estrogen.
Yeah,
so,
too much girl boss power. America would have been scared.
You're right. All right. Well, Josh, everyone, please read Ettingermentum. It's on Substack. We will put a link to that below. Thanks so much for coming on today. Really.
No, it's great. It's my pleasure.
All right. Talk to you soon. All right, quick break, and when we come back, we will be joined by Jesselyn Cook, award-winning reporter, author of The Quiet Damage, QAnon, and the Destruction of the American Family. We are back, and we are joined now by Jesselyn Cook, award-winning reporter, journalism lecturer, and author of her debut book, The Quiet Damage, QAnon, and the Destruction of the American Family. Jesselyn, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
I'm so glad to be here.
So your book is like really this kind of intimate portrait of these different families affected by the QAnon conspiracy theory, and I loved how humanizing it was. How did you decide to write about this topic? How did you come upon some of these families and subjects?
I've been writing on the tech beat and covering different forms of extremism for several years. And as myth and disinformation started feeling like a bigger and bigger issue and part of our political system, I was seeing a lot of really terrific reporting on the harm that it can cause to our democracy and to our public health. I just wasn't seeing much conversation about the harm it does behind closed doors and out of sight to families and believers, their loved ones. And so I started getting really curious about it after I ended up at a QAnon rally in early 2020 toward the start of the pandemic. And I wasn't expecting a ton of people to show up because QAnon at the time was still considered mostly a fringe movement confined to the entrails of the internet. But I was blown away. There were hundreds of people who were out bearing their faces, associating with these beliefs and standing up for what they felt to be what was right. And so I spent a lot of that day talking to people about what had motivated them to come out. And I was really blown away by the diversity of people who had come out. There were people from all different walks of life. There were young, old, people of different colors, people of different political views, even when I was talking to some of these folks, and there were families and kids. And so I just wanted to understand what had brought them there. And then I wanted to continue my reporting to see how it was impacting all these different people.
You can almost see how that provides a bit of community for folks and connection. And you speak about how this conspiracy theory was a part of people feeling lonely or anxious and not having that community potentially, but also how it connects to the pandemic. So could you kind of describe how QAnon evolved and blended into anti-vax mythology from COVID? Because it started obviously, with Pizzagate and in the 2016 run, but then it becomes this network, right, where you can feel like you're a part of something greater and you have this communal connection.
Yeah, it really is a movement. It's evolved much beyond just being a theory or belief. As it has been kind of tacitly or openly embraced by some of our political leaders who like to wink and nod at it because much of their base may be part of the QAnon movement. It has grown, and the theories have been diluted and normalized. QAnon, these ideas used to be so absurd and people would just laugh at them. And now a lot of people, whether they recognize these ideas are rooted in QAnon or not, are starting to spout the core of these beliefs. And so not only does it appeal to people for different reasons, I think there's a misconception that only stupid or crazy people can get into this way of thinking. In many cases through my reporting, what I found was that it's people who just don't feel really fulfilled in life. Maybe they're lacking community, as you suggested, or they're lacking a sense of purpose or meaning or hope. And QAnon, in some way or another, provides that to them. And, that can be a lot more precious to people than the truth. And so it can really hold them there. But in addition to offering very real unmet needs to adherents, QAnon also became a big opportunity for grifters and bad actors who wanted to make money. And that's where you see some of this anti-vax stuff coming in too, is a lot of QAnon influencer types have recognized that they can exploit people's very real, rational fears and twist them and exaggerate them and scare them into spending their money on things they don't need, snake oil, etc. And just their attention, attention can be so easily monetized today that a lot of people have made a lot of money saying absolutely crazy things online because they know it will get clicks and they'll get a cut of that ad revenue.
Yeah, I mean, you cite the statistic in your book that up to 20% of Americans believe some version of QAnon conspiracy theories. In the first chapter, you profile someone, they all go by pseudonyms, but someone named Matt. In the book, he watched something called The Plan to Save the World, and I guess then spent half of his family's income on gold and silver coins, and then his wife was a part of a multi-level marketing scheme, which is another exploitative scam that preys on people who want community, particularly this one LuLaRoe, which is that leggings company, a multi-level marketing scheme, I believe, that there's a documentary on it. You can see how insidious that is. But like that story, the fact that both him and his wife were exploited by these scams, just of different versions, it really struck a chord with me.
That story was really heartbreaking. As Matt starts kind of going deeper into QAnon, his wife has a bit of a parallel identity crisis of her own. She's been his wife since she was quite young. She's the mother of his children. She feels like she's losing him. And MLMs, being involved with LuLaRoe, kind of gives her some of her agency back. It makes all these grand promises about how she can achieve financial freedom for her family and she can be a big provider. And that gives her a sense of purpose and a sense of value. Whereas at the same time, Matt is deriving that from being a digital soldier, where he can show up online every day and feel like he's part of the good guys fighting the good fight. And, his way into QAnon, he wasn't always interested in this stuff from a true perspective. He, used to laugh at conspiracy theories, but after he suffered a debilitating injury that really stripped him of his purpose and left him in a chair day in and day out, he couldn't take his kids to the park anymore, and he couldn't romance his wife in the ways that he used to. QAnon offered him a chance to matter again, and that was it pulled him from bed every day. And even if there was a voice in his head that knew he was being lied to, it was overpowered by this desire to feel important and to have some agency again. And so, yeah, you can really see how QAnon and conspiracy theories more broadly can be a crutch to people, similar to an MLM or other vices, drugs, gambling. And that's really the tragedy of it all. And that's kind of why fact checking is so often not effective, because this really isn't about the facts at the end of the day.
Right. It is. It's about filling a hole. And things like, there were two people as well who just suffered incredible tragedy. Emily was someone you profiled whose husband died by suicide, and she had children to take care of, but was a progressive, reportedly, before this. And I have a family member that went from a Bernie supporter to a QAnon anti-vaxxer as well. So this is a real thing. And Doris, someone else who you profile, who was misdiagnosed with cancer, and then because of that, her skepticism about medicine turned into full-on like anti-vax beliefs, and then QAnon as well. If you don't mind, just talking about how those tragedies and traumas played into their adoption of QAnon.
I think with conspiracy theory obsession, it's in many cases less about the who than it is about the when. It's not like there's any one profile of person who can be vulnerable to this. It's more about when they intersect with these theories in their lives, then are they vulnerable? What have they been through? And, for Doris, as you said, she's this elderly woman and she's always been very sharp, very bright, but she had this very, very traumatic cancer misdiagnosis. She thought she was going to die. And that, as you said, her deep distrust of the medical system really bled into all bodies of power and kind of planted the seeds for her to make her path to QAnon. And there were a lot of opportunists along the way who exploited those fears again and who kind of validated her distrust. And she found a big community of people on Facebook who told her that the medical establishment was evil to its core and every doctor was part of this agenda to take advantage of their patients and drain them for every dollar they had. And so, Doris is not a stupid woman. She's not a bad person. Same with Emily, the other character you mentioned. There is even a former Bernie Sanders supporter, like your family member, who went from the left all the way to the far right. And for her, she just so desperately wanted a better future for her son. Bernie, she thought, was going to bring that about by taking on this profits over people governance model and kind of bringing prosperity for all. When he lost, she lost her hope. And then QAnon, in a weird way, gave it back to her. It promised her that the Great Awakening and the storm was going to sweep away all these evil elites and just bring greatness. And she so badly wanted that. She was kind of able to tune out all these inconsistencies and these failed promises from QAnon just to cling to this idea that maybe it would come true. And so again, it's just, again and again through this reporting process, it was just clear to me that IQ is really not a factor here, despite the stereotypes you see of conspiracy theorists and kind of the assumption that they're morons. That's kind of the narrative that you hear most often.
Yeah, and can you talk about how QAnon in particular, there's like a Russian doll effect where like when you get in, there's another rabbit hole to go down and then another and then another. And it provides kind of endless meaning because it's definitionally a rabbit hole in the sense that like there's no end because there's no there, but you can still, almost like a hobby or like an addiction, it's more probably akin to that, find relief in perpetually tapping into that.
It's a very participatory movement. The followers are what keeps it alive. And, instead of laying out evidence to then draw conclusions from, QAnon lays out conclusions and its followers are tasked with going out and finding the evidence to support it. And you'll see them connecting all kinds of dots that have no business being connected and just drawing conclusions from random noise to twist reality into supporting their narrative. And it does come with this sense of accomplishment. It makes you feel like you're part of this, you're part of keeping the movement alive, you're part of this grand battle to take out the deep state. That feels good. It feels good to show up every day and feel like you're doing research or you're working towards this greater goal. It's in many ways similar to a lot of legitimate forms of activism in the ways that it makes people feel. But of course, it's so much of it is just based on delusions or distorted truth and can cause immense harm, not only to the believers, but to the people who care about them.
You do have some hope in your book about people who have been pulled out. Can you talk about that? And just, we've had viewers write in about, say, I have a close friend who I feel like I'm losing, like they're a part of QAnon now or whatever. If you don't mind speaking about that story, because maybe some of our viewers or listeners could use the advice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. There are a couple people in this book who make it out the other side and come to recognize that they had been duped. And I understand there's an impulse to try to correct falsehoods with facts. That makes sense. And so many loved ones will do that, just trying to debunk people out of their delusions and make them see reality. But once we can kind of step back and recognize that the path into QAnon type thinking is so rarely rooted in a desire to be well-informed, we can kind of shift our approach. And so my advice would be put aside the what if belief, if you can, look past the lunacy and try to think about the why and understand what is it about, say, QAnon that's really calling to this person? What need does it serve? Are they lacking community? Are they seeking purpose, meaning, whatever it may be? And if you can kind of identify that, which is not always easy to do, and then try to address that underlying cause, like I would say fact checking kind of is like attacking the symptom. But if you can focus on the cause, which has drawn them there in the first place, and try to foster a sense of belonging outside of QAnon, offline, get them involved in a hobby, get them involved in something that satisfies that unmet need, you're going to see more success that way, because their need for these conspiracy theories will fall away once that unmet need is addressed. And there are in the book as well some expert recommended deprogramming strategies that I have seen to be effective, the Socratic questioning method, motivational interviewing. But the big takeaway I would say is kind of getting past this need to focus on the true or the false and try to understand what's really going on a deeper level.
Jesselyn Cook, the book is called The Quiet Damage, QAnon and the Destruction of the American Family. We will put a link to your book in the description wherever people are listening to or watching this. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, folks, with that, we are going to wrap up the free part of this program, head into the fun half where we will take your calls, we'll read your IMs, we will have some fun. We on ESPN took this week off because I was off in the earlier part of the week. But we will be back. I mean, I want to talk about a lot of things in the NFL. I want to talk about that Philadelphia Eagles profile, about what the hell happened at the end of last year, and Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts maybe not getting along. I mean, that's catnip for me. We'll have some other stuff. And the Olympics. I mean, we have to dive into everything surrounding the anti-trans mania about those boxers. So youtube.com/ESPN show. Stay tuned for next week. We have Brandon Sutton, I believe. 1 second. Matt, we can hear you, Brandon. Hello. Bradley's just setting up your shot because Matt will be back in just a second to tell us about Left Reckoning. In the meantime, maybe while you're doing... Oh, wait, there he is.
Hey. Here I am, fellas.
Brandon.
Hey.
What's up? Let's go. All that stuff.
Let's go. You know, in 3 or 4 months from now, we won't be saying "Let's go, Brandon" anymore. It's end of an era.
We'll be saying "Come on, Kamala."
Let's go. Kamala.
I don't think we'll be saying that.
Let's go, Kamala.
Oh God, what's Trump doing with Kamala?
Kamala.
Do we know that?
Like she talks too much.
Dude, he's lost his
she like rambles.
He's juiceless now.
He
completely.
Really is.
The nicknames are gone.
I mean, we'll talk about JD Vance in a bit, but he has just like sapped
Speaking of juiceless,
all the riz. So anyway, what's happening on the Discourse?
We'll have a new episode out for patrons of the Discourse this weekend or tomorrow. I guess Friday's part of the weekend if you're like me and you enjoy to celebrate a little early. About the pick of Tim Walz as the VP candidate, the revelations going on at Seder in Israel, and the lack of sticking power of Trump's almost assassination.
Yes, I'm fascinated about your.
What are you talking
about?
That. What was that?
That last part about the lack of sticking power about Trump's assassination attempt.
Assassination attempt?
Oh yeah, right.
I mean, yeah, obviously, look, if you believe in that sort of thing,
I don't think that happened.
Yeah.
If you're hooked into mainstream media,
was still in Robben Island.
I mean, if people ever want to do the both sides things, like there have been some people who've been truthers about the assassination attempt, but not really. Like
it's weird about they won't release the stuff about his ear, and like that's not true. Like that's the thing is like we get too quick to say, look at all these people going off the deep end on something. We should have like actual know why his ear was bleeding.
Yeah, I hear that, but I don't know. You saw the bullet in the photo.
To be fair, I have been spreading misinformation about this because I think it's funny. So I can, but even without my own misinformation, I don't think I've met a single person in real life who believes it happened. I think a lot of people watch too much television, so they don't think that like this kind of thing could happen. And unfortunately, they announced Vance as the VP pick right after, which sucked all the energy out of the entire universe. Really, now we're just like in total like entropy. But
we'll make fun of Vance in the fun half for sure. A little bit. Yeah.
I mean, the way it was real, though, I think is that Trump seems afraid to campaign now.
Yeah.
And two, that a guy got killed by it, and there's no way Trump would put himself in actual jeopardy.
No, it definitely happened. I just think actually also him trying to play it off so strong, he should have come out at the RNC in a little bit of a sling. The ear bandage was like silly. Like they kind of tried to make that a thing, but like
him
a
walking
swing,
out to many men.
We can sell bandages. They're really cheap to make, and everyone will buy one.
Yeah.
It's up for $20.
Exactly.
We have Matt Binder, and are you
Hello.
sporting the mullet now too? Is this is this
The haircut looks sick, Binder.
it looks good.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Yeah, I guess it's a bit of a it's a mohawk, but down.
Mohawk,
It's just not.
right?
I have long hair. Well, no, it's not a faux hawk. Faux hawk is when you don't actually shave the sides. But yeah, it's a down
good.
mohawk.
Matt's sporting it too. It's all the rage right now.
That's much
It's
better
a
than the
mullet.
fade
Yeah, it
that
does look like
you
a
have to-
mullet when it's down. Yeah.
It's much better haircut than the fade that you have to clean up the back of, because I hate the back of like that.
You
Like,
just
whether
like the
natural or
expedience.
clean, like both look stupid as hell to me. So I just like keep.
I
it
love a
checked.
good fade. I need to get a haircut.
I like
People,
fades on the
complain all
side
the
for
time.
sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring the part back. Like, well, I was gonna say like how Drake is doing it, but I don't want to be associated with that.
Yeah.
I might need to-
Maybe hold off on that. Like
Yeah.
I wanted to tweet out that Drake meme of that, and I was like, I don't even want to tacitly show support for this man
Yeah.
at this moment.
Didn't he respond? Did he do a new drop?
No,
recently?
he's
I think he did
pulled
yesterday.
away.
He let it go. Yeah, he's kind of like
I feel like. Okay, sorry, Binder. What's happening on your shows?
Oh no problem. YouTube.com/Matt Binder did a stream on Tuesday after, the big vice president announcement, and so we talked about that. Had callers call in. We talked about all that, and then tonight, Leftist Mafia. If you really enjoy seeing Matt Binder and Brandon Sutton together on Thursdays on the Majority Report, then you'll get a double header tonight, as Brandon will be joining us on Leftist Mafia.
I will be. Yes, I will. I'm very excited. They haven't told me what ethnicity this mafia is, but I'm holding my hopes up for Italian because I love a good ZD. So it's gonna be.
Oh yeah, based on our intro, our intro video, it's definitely an Italian mafia. Yes.
Okay. Cool.
That intro video is pretty phenomenal. Best in the game, I gotta say.
Yeah, it's all Mike from the Humanist Report's doing. I
Well,
believe.
only
Yeah,
ethical
I think
use
so.
of AI is the Leftist Mafia intro. All right, guys, we're going to head into the fun half now. Please, if you can, support this program. Join themajority.report.com. The number is 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Okay, Emma, please.
Well, I feel that my voice is sorely lacking on the Majority Report.
Wait. Look, Sam is unpopular.
I do deserve a vacation at Disney World. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome Emma to the show.
It is Thursday.
I think you need to take over for Sam.
Yes, please.
No. I'm gonna pause you right there.
Wait, what?
You can't encourage Emma to live like this. And I'll tell you why. She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
What?
Tour, sushi, and poker.
Tim's upset.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. She was offered a tour, sushi, and
That's what we call it in the biz.
tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Right.
Tour, sushi, and poker.
We're going to get demonetized.
I just think that what you did to Tim Pool was mean.
Free speech.
That's not what we're about here. Look at how sad he's become now. We shouldn't even talk about it because I think you're responsible.
I probably am in a certain way, but let's get to the meltdown here.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Oh my God.
Tour,
Wow.
sushi.
I'm sorry, I'm losing my fucking mind.
She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Logic.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Boy. Tour,
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
tour,
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid.
had this debate 7,000 times.
A little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
Tour, I'm losing my fucking mind.
Some people just don't understand.
So I'm not trying to be a dick right now, but like I absolutely think the U.S. should be providing me with a wife and kids.
That's not what we're talking about here. Okay, all right.
It's not a fun job.
Tour,
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
Willy Wonka tour,
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
what's that offered a tour?
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing. That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
What's that offered a tour?
Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Rogan has done it again.
That offered a tour?
That's a real thing. That's
Poker with the boys.
I think he might be blowing it out of proportion.
real thing. That's
Poker with the boys. That offered a tour?
That's a real thing. That's
Poker.
Let's go, Joey.
Tour? sushi, and poker with the boys.
Take it easy, Doug.
Twerk, sushi, and poker.
Things have really gotten out of hand.
Sushi and poker with the boys.
Delusional.
Twerk,
Deluded.
sushi.
You don't have a clue as to what's going on. Live YouTube.
Sam has the weight of the world on his shoulders. Sam doesn't want to do this show anymore. It was so much easier when the Majority Report was just you. You were happy.
Let's change the subject.
Right.
Rangers and Knicks are doing great.
Now shut up. I don't want people saying reckless things on your program.
That's
No.
one of the most difficult parts about this show.
This is a pro-killing podcast.
I'm thinking maybe it's time we bury the hatchet.
Left is best.
Violet, twerk.
Don't be foolish and don't fucking tweet at me and don't bitch. The way Emma has cucked all of these people, love it.
That's where my heart is, so I wrote my honors thesis about it.
Oh,
Sorry,
she wrote an honest thesis. I guess I should hand the main mic to you now.
You are to the right of me on foreign policy.
We already fund Israel, dude. Are you against that?
That's a tougher question I have an answer to.
Incredible theme song.
Hi, Bumbler.
Emma Vigeland, absolutely one of my favorite people. Actually, not just in the game, like period.
We are back, folks. It is the fun half, and I am going to turn off the voicemail so people can call in. 646-257-3920.
Remember what we? Oh, sorry, I should let you get the number up. But remember what we talked about last week on this show? I'm still sort of cringing from it. Is the Bill Maher?
Bill Maher. Yeah.
I rewatched that, and good lord, that is. Someone should call the police.
I don't remember what it was, but shortly after we discussed that day, someone posted a completely another section of their interview that we didn't clip. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember thinking, I think that's even more disturbing than the one we watched.
I just can't.
I mentally blocked it out. Go ahead.
I just couldn't get over how he got so aroused that he couldn't talk. Like he was just trailing off. He was like so drunk and aroused. He was just like, oh yeah.
Right, like all the blood went somewhere else, and it's
I would
just
love
like
to know what it's like to be a 21-year-old girl.
Have the whole world by the balls.
That's a verbatim quote.
Yeah.
My mentorship days.
God. Ugh.
Someone should have sprayed him with a fire.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Down, doggy.
Like spritz him like a cat.
Yes. Sam Cedar Sim says, "Yay! Good morning, EmMajority crew.